And hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 DocLands Documentary Film Festival. I'm Kelly Clement. I'm from the programming team. I'm here with Trudi Angell to talk about her film, RECUA, The Mule Pack Train. It's premiered at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival and since has screened at many film festivals from Mexico to Hawaii. And thank you so much for making this film, Trudi. It's a beautiful and very intimate film. One of those rare documentaries where you actually feel like you're participating in what's going on up there on the screen. And it's a remarkable look at the family relationships that's unique to Baja California and the Mexican culture. Now, this is your first feature, so you're now an award-winning filmmaker. But tell us a little bit about your background and your other profession.
Okay, my other profession, which led me to making this film, RECUA, was the whole story behind it comes from one of my cowboy vaquero guides and friends here on the peninsula. I'm signing in here from a small village in the heart of Baja California Sur, and here in San Ignacio for the moment. And my protagonist friend is Darío Higuera Meza. And he was still is a saddle maker of the old traditional saddle making style. So besides being a very charismatic person and very fun to work with, he's also who I speak about as one of the keepers of old California traditions. And when I speak of California, I actually speak of the original California, which was here in the lower part of the Mexican Baja California Peninsula. So this is the original California. And when my old cowboy friend Darío said, Trudi, I'd love to make a film about how my grandfather used to run these mule pack trains with donkeys filled with old traditional goods from a small village in the mountains of the Baja California Peninsula on down to La Paz for 200 miles or 300 kilometers. That's what his grandfather used to do. When there were no roads on this peninsula, there were recuas. That's how all of the goods got transferred from the coastal areas up into the mountains or from small villages to the larger capital city of La Paz for trade. And so he said to me one day about 5 years ago, I really would like to reenact an old pack train, a recua, like my grandfather used to do. And you know what? I want it on film. And so I said, oh, I'll help you. And little did I know what I was getting into. It's been a wonderful journey, both the time on the trail and the time making the film and gathering the group of filmmakers together. And so my life of living, running tours, operating tours down here in Baja California Sur led me to making this wonderful film. And thank you for appreciating it and choosing it for DocLands.
Oh, wonderful. Well, did you realize what a journey it would be?
No, I continue to say that it was like going to a four-year college for me of learning about filmmaking, and my learning curve was 90 degrees straight up. It wasn't a curve, it was like straight up. And so, but I've had a wonderful time because we were able to pull together an amazing young professional crew and team of both the production and post-production team. And it's just great. We all feel like family, and the protagonist and his family, we just have all become closer because of that. And I met Darío Higuera Meza about almost 30 years ago when my daughter and I rode in on mules when she was 3 years old. We rode into his ranch for about 5 hours cross country in the middle of the peninsula, and they lived on a roadless ranch. And we were the first American or extranjeros, people other than the local ranch families around him for miles and miles away, to have first visited his ranch back then. And we had to get there by mule, and discovered what a wonderful historic saddle maker he was, and what a charismatic person and what a knowledgeable person he was. And that was one thing, that his dream of making this movie is to share that history and share that knowledge. And I think my focus over the years with my tours have been to kind of connect the two cultures. And so we're hoping that's exactly what the film does, is to draw you into the place and time of that old activity of moving goods by donkey.
Well, it certainly does. And that's kind of sounds like what your occupation is taking people back in time.
Yeah, we just did a wonderful trip. A few days ago, we were in the Rock Art Canyons and for several days. And when we go out there, it's so much fun to introduce people who have no idea how there are still people living in the mountains here in Mexico who pack up a donkey to go to the store. And we have a team on our guide team in the Sierra de San Francisco up here in the northern part of southern Baja is a family of a man. We had his 17-year-old daughter and his 10-year-old son, who could outrope any of the cowboys who were on the trip with us. He was amazing.
Wow. And how many people do you usually take on these trips?
Anywhere from 2 to 10 sometimes, but we like to stay around 6 or 8 just to keep the intimacy of the group with the meeting the locals and not be too unwieldy as you're moving camp from one place to another, packing on burros to get to your next location.
Now, did Dabirio himself go on RECUAs?
He only heard stories around the campfire of the old traditional, what I'd call the long distance RECUA, which was from the village of Comondú down to La Paz, where they would take many, many pounds of gear and food, or to trade for the rice and the things that they weren't able to get in the smaller villages. But he never went on an old traditional recua of his own with the old arrieros, but they were arrieros, meaning the herders, the packers who moved the team down the peninsula and back up again. He heard stories around the campfire. When he was 10 years old, his family moved from the village of Comondú, La Purísima, just to the north, down to live in a cave while they built their ranch. On our website, larecua.com, Larecua, larecua.com, you can read stories in the About section about the film of how Darío came to bring his idea about doing these pack trains. He obviously, yes, he knows how to pack a donkey. He's done that most of his young life, but he was never one of those, what we would call the long distance trucker who moved a pack train of a dozen donkeys to sell goods down between villages and towns.
So how long ago do you think the last RECUA was?
I've heard people say even in the 50s, because there was no paved road here on the peninsula until the 70s, but there were dirt roads here even in the 50s and 60s. So you kind of lost that need for those old pack trains, for those long distance pack trains after about the 1960s, but there were still a few, or there were still ranches up in the mountains that didn't have road access. And so even in the 60s and the 70s, there were people who did the shorter routes, and they were called fayuqueros, or peddlers, tinkers, who would load up a half a dozen different donkeys and take things that people in the ranches might need that they wouldn't be able to get to town to get for themselves. So besides having the long haul truckers with their dozen donkeys with all the loads of gear or food on them, they would also have the shorter routes, the people who would just leave a town, a coastal town maybe, and go around from ranch to ranch to ranch, carrying goods around to people. And that lasted into the 70s. There's a famous writer, historian named Harry W. Crosby, who still lives in La Jolla, California, who traveled down here a lot and is very well known as one of the favorite authors for people to read about how that lifestyle still continued on into the 70s, basically until the highway came in. And there are still little tiny pockets of roadless ranches that you can still get to, where people have to like I say, pack a donkey to go to the store.
Yeah. Now, I noticed that Dario is co-director. So you work together. How did you define your roles in this?
That was a very fun thing that happened at the end of making the film almost. The post-production team and I were sitting around and going, well, who was the director? Because it was a verite filming scenario where we just had several cameras on the whole team as we moved down the trail, and then took the information later on to weave the story and write a script to what we had captured. And so when we looked at the whole thing, we said, well, everything that Darío wanted to talk about is now coming out of his mouth. It's coming out of his knowledge, out of his memory. And although he didn't per se act as a director, he was the natural director of the film.
Yeah.
So I got placed in co-director position, but I certainly was producer. I can say that.
Now, in the beginning, it seems like he was very sick, and that maybe he shouldn't be going on this journey. And did you at any time consider ending it, stopping the journey?
Yeah, in Comondu, as we started the trip on March 25th, 26th, he was not doing well. He had a horrible case of bronchitis. But he was, and I even said to him, Darío, really, I don't want you to go on this trip. I know this is your dream, but it could be very dangerous for you. And we all discussed that. And his family really actually didn't want him to go. But being Darío Higuera, he said, no, I have to go. This is it. I have to go, no matter what. And he had the desire, the determination to do this story, to make this story come to life. And it was so amazing that he really did it. And true, on day 2 of our trip, he lost his breath. We were riding along. Suddenly he could not breathe. We could only show small sections of that dangerous situation. And so it didn't show the rest of us jumping in to try to help him and give him and make him get off his mule, which he didn't do. And then my friend, who we took along as a medic, actually along the ride, because we were out in the middle of nowhere. There were no roads. We were on an old section of original El Camino Real.
One of the quotes was, there's a lot of life and not enough time.
Right.
And that seems to fit very well in there.
Yeah. And so one of our trail guides, only for a certain part of the trail, the first few days of the trail on the most remote section, we actually needed to have another friend of mine who's been guiding for many, many years with us. And he knew that trail like the back of his hand. And so we asked him to go ahead and lead and kind of help out with the with location for this for the film. And he's also a very wise person, and he told Darío, come on, get off your mule. Yeah, there's not enough light. There's not enough. How does that go? There wasn't enough.
Not enough light. And well, there's a lot of life, but not enough time.
Okay, that's right. Okay. Yeah. So his comment to Darío, there's a lot of life, but not enough time. And so Darío, being Darío, once again, just determined, said, come on, let's go. We're just going. And then he got better. And we really, truly think, as he says a little bit later in the film, I got better because I'm out here. I'm out here where I love to be. And, and he just.
It was so amazingly realistic about what the toll of riding across that terrain is like. I mean, just watching it, I felt painful. I felt stiff. And was that common, just to get cramps? And I mean, I know people in the old days that were used to it, but you guys.
Yeah, I would say he felt it a little bit more than the rest of us. Possibly he wasn't drinking enough electrolytes. He needed more electrolytes in his body. We started plying him with more electrolytes. But yes, it was harder for him. He hadn't done a long ride like that for quite a while. So he did start cramping up and having those physical issues that one might feel if you're not getting enough water because the desert environment is being harsh on you.
Yeah.
And then the looking at it from the children's point of view, having the children along on the trip was one of Darío's original dreams, was to run this trip with his grandson, because it was his grandfather who taught him and led him into this knowledge of how the old packers used to go. So it was basically, he wanted to pass down this oral history, the oral family history. And that was the perfect combination to have his 8-year-old grandson. And then because we needed more people to help with the pack donkeys, and there aren't a whole lot of people who have that knowledge still, we brought down Ricardo and his daughter, Azucena, from the Sierra de San Francisco, where I am right now in the northern part of the southern part of the peninsula.
Yeah. And it was so amazing to see those youngsters so comfortable out there on the trail, the gathering wood and building fires and sleeping on the ground. It was wonderful.
And that's because they have lived that. That's part of their background. They're growing up. As you can see, Azucena and her dad, Ricardo, live in the heights of the Sierra de San Francisco. And she's grown up riding donkeys. And she says that beautifully in the front part, in the early part, the first 5-10 minutes of the film. She says, wow, you know, here she is, 10 years old, a wise old 10 years old, and she's been riding mules or donkeys since she was 3 years old. And she says, I've never done a pack trip this long, but I really am happy to be sharing Darío's dream with him. She says that in a couple of places. And just the wisdom of the children who have grown up.
So we were talking about the trail angels at the very end of the film. You get to see all these different people that you met along the journey. And how was that, getting to meet them? Was it any problem getting them to trust you and agree to be in the film?
Not at all. It was such a wonderful experience because some of the people we had known before, we had met along the way, and they were quite excited to have us ride through. And the hospitality, the level of hospitality in the mountains of Baja California Sur, when you ride in on a mule, it just gives it a whole different sense than if you come up in a car or so riding along on a mule and having Darío and his team be honoring the lifestyle that they know of and used to live. All of those elders who we met along the trail, elders and young people alike, were very thrilled to have us show up at their ranches. And so, yes, the credits, in my opinion, run a little bit long and maybe a little bit slow, but it's really fun to read them. And it's probably one of the few sets of credits that could be really fun to read because we had to thank so many people. We had to thank the donkeys and the mules and the people at the ranches and somebody who just gave us coffee as we rode along the trail. And so trying to put all the credits together to honor those people as well was really fun. And we had some really beautiful still shots of some of those folks. So we thought it was worthwhile putting that in there. And then if you make it to the very, very end of the credits, then you get the answer to the riddle as well. So it's worth staying through the full 86 minutes.
Tell us the answer to the riddle.
No?
Okay.
No, you have to watch the movie.
Okay. Now, have all these angels and other subjects gotten to see the film yet?
No, right now in the Baja California Peninsula, especially in Baja California Sur, we were about to, after Easter, say after the middle of April, we're going to go ahead and propose to the head of Cultura or cultural activities here of the state, and also the governor who has also seen the film, and many of his cabinet here in the state, many of those folks, head of tourism, head of Cultura, have all seen the film and are very excited about it. And so we're hoping to get something donated our way to be able to send a small team out to all of the villages and all of the places that were included, so that everyone has a chance to see in the villages these the film that they may have been a part of.
Well, you might have to make the journey again and bring a VCR with you.
Yeah. Yeah, we hope to have a big screen and a nice projector and some good sound. I had a lovely experience just recently. We were in the San Diego Latino Film Festival a couple of weeks ago in San Diego, and in which La RECUA won its category, so we're happy about that. But after the fact, after the screening on one of the days in the theater, I had a fellow come up to me who has been a professional sound design person on large films for many, many years. And he said, Trudi, that was really amazing. The sound that you captured, that your sound recorders captured, that your the way it was put together, when you hear the spurs as they go jingling down the trails, you hear the hoof steps of the animal as it's either tumbling through the rocks or splashing through the water or in the sandy areas, and the birds. One thing we had to work on in the final sound production was, no, you can't have any Tweety birds there. You can't have any riparian habitat birds out in this desert scene. We need to change that over to California quail or dove or in a morning scene or whatever. So we tried as best we could to get exactly so somebody down here who knows that stuff, a cowboy watching that film, wouldn't go, that bird's not there. They're very in tune with their environment. So somebody down here would pick up on the fact of, oh, they don't have those birds out there. That's wrong. So we wanted to get it right.
Yeah. And how about the music? How was the music composed?
The music was composed by the editor is from La Paz, Sergio Castro. His brother, who did much of the sound design, was also from La Paz. Alejandro Guerrero, who's the musician composer, basically Sergio and Alejandro lived in my house in Loreto for many months, and they worked with each other. Alejandro would watch a piece and play the music, and he would just design the music right there. He slept on the floor in my office. Sergio lived in my daughter's back bedroom, the spare bedroom, for a number of months. And that's how we became quite like a family. So I feel like they're all kind of my ahijados, my godsons, my goddaughter and godsons that were part of the team. And because they were all from La Paz, they had a strong sense of family background and history and wanted to bring that out. That was part of their desire, was to honor their own ancestors in this story. And so I think that's exactly why a lot of heart went into that film and a lot of heart comes through it, because all of the team members, or almost all of the team members of production and post-pro, were from La Paz and wanted to share that story.
Well, it really draws you into the film and makes you feel like you're back in time.
Yeah, it does.
Sound
People have said, oh, I watched the first 15, 20 minutes until they ride into a village and you see a car and you're shocked because you see a car, because you felt like you've just been back in time for 100 years riding in the first part of the trail.
that was quite a shock when you're watching it. When after days on the trail, you come into modern day San Javier with its cars and all the bystanders with their phones taking pictures.
Exactly. Yeah, that was part of it. We had decided early on that we weren't going to try to do a period piece. We were just going to try to capture whatever happened along as it rolled out. So that became part of that.
Well, what are Ramon and Azucena doing right now?
Ricardo and Azucena actually are living in the Sierra San Francisco. And Ramoncito, the grandson. Yeah. Okay, he's living out on the ranch with his dad right now. He was in school for a little while, but his dad needed him as a hand out on the ranch, so he's helping his dad. And I think eventually he'll balance that out, as he says. He kind of comments on that at the end of the film, is that he wants to stay on the ranch. And so that's what he's doing. He's doing a little bit of both of that, since he's been able to be present in school some, but now he's back out on the ranch learning some of those old skills. Azucena is helping her family with running the goats, making the cheese. We're hoping to do a trip in May with a lot of the ranch kids from the area of Loreto or the Sierra de la Giganta farther south, and take them up into the village here and have Azucena and Ramoncito and some other kids now gather together and share their experiences as well, and their different knowledges of different mountain ranges that they live in.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
That's another movie.
It could be another movie.
Yeah.
We have a very short film about when those kids, when Azucena was 8 years old, and a little clip. Oh, and then to mention one other thing about Darío Higuera is that he in 2007, and then also I think it came out in 2009, he was kind of star of a film called Corazón Vaquero down here on the peninsula, produced and directed by Cody McClintock and his father, Gary McClintock, a well-known saddle maker in the San Diego area. And so they wanted to also share with the world the magic of the Baja Vaquero and Ranchero lifestyle. And so they made a short film that also won a few awards as far as heritage and roots and things like that, called Corazon Vaquero. So Darío knew what he was talking about when he said, Trudi, I want to do this reenactment of my grandfather's lifestyle on the trail with these donkeys, and I want it on film because he'd already been part of a production that had been popular and won awards, and is still very popular down here.
And what plans do you have for release of this film? Where can, like, the people that have watched it here, how can they tell their friends where to see it?
Mm-hmm. Well, on our website on larecua.com, you can scroll down and join our mailing list, and I'll be doing some hybrid distribution. We haven't checked into a full-on distribution yet of for the film, and we'd also like to start to spread. It's been popular now. It's won several awards, and now it has been with DocLands. I think this is number 12, 11 or 12 film festival that we're in. So, and we haven't even touched upon Europe and South America and other Latin American countries yet. It also won in Mexico City, and it won in Cabo San Lucas in its categories. And so we're all very proud of that. And many people in the state of Baja California Sur are very proud of that. And so we're looking at where it might go as a trajectory, and possibly heading over to Europe next, but definitely hybrid. And so occasionally I do announce to our mailing list a time frame that people can stream online and then be able to watch it. And hopefully we'll be able to do some theatrical, and I'm not sure, I need to find an agent, someone who is gifted at that for bilingual films. I think it's a little different from most films, doing a bilingual film.
Now, it screened at Maui, right?
Yes, it did.
How did that go over? How was it received there?
Yeah, actually, I haven't been in touch with those folks. I've been so busy because it screened back in November, and then suddenly my down here and being on the pack trips and all that, I need to take a breather. And after the DocLands Festival in May, I should be able to settle into a summer full of follow-up and what are the next steps and all of that. And one thing I wanted to mention as far as production of this film, I had mentioned a little bit earlier, we had 3 cameras on Darío and the whole team riding down the trail pretty much all the time. But we also had a sound guy named Rogelio Munoz, who was really amazing, very fun to travel with. He'd never been on a mule before. At least a couple of the camera people had been on mules, and so at least they knew what they were in for. And we had a GoPro with a stabilizer, so that helped for some of those shots along the trail. But when Rogelio got on his mule with his boom and the microphone and riding along on the trail and riding along and trying to keep the mic out of the viewfinder of the cameras, and he was super amazing to be able to capture everything that needed capturing in order to put a great sound background together for the film.
Wow, you're lucky. He deserves an award.
He deserves an award for sure. And we have a great little, also on the website, we have in the About section, a great little interview. We have a 40-minute interview, but we trimmed it down to an 8 or 9 minute interview too. That gives you a really fun sense of background stories, how La RECUA was run and what it took technically to get some of that footage.
Well, thank you so much. Well, everybody be sure and check out the La RECUA website. You won't be disappointed. And want to thank you so much, Trudi, for coming out and making this film and sharing it with us. Will you be at the DocLands Festival?
Yes, that was when I heard that a couple of weeks ago. I thought, okay, I'm heading north pretty soon. I'll be up there in Northern California then for a couple of weeks during the festival time. and very excited to meet you all there
Great.
and share some more stories if possible.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us and sharing.
Okay, muchas gracias y nos vemos.
Buenos.